You want me to carry you out of here?
I'm not going. I'm not leaving. I hate it there.
Hola, comrades. Today's topic of interest, Sally Draper. When she's first introduced, Sally is nothing more than a cute, precocious child. She's worth more as an idea than as a character. Through her, the silly but earnest desire of Mad Men in its early seasons to demonstrate how different the 60s were is manifested. She makes her father drinks, her mother slaps her and is not concerned when she has a plastic bag over her head. She also fulfills the role played by most kid characters on prestige dramas featuring anti-heroes, meaning she serves as a tool to make the protagonist's betrayal feel more visceral and scathing. She's perfectly adequate as this tool, but no more so than her younger brother, Bobby, and indeed, the two share this role. As an indicator of how replaceable the character is in the early seasons of Mad Men, her first appearance is at the end of the first episode, in the reveal that Dawn is married with kids, and this reveal works effectively despite her, 1, being played by a different child actress, and 2, the fact that you can barely tell she's played by a different child actress. However, despite her simple beginnings, Sally became my favorite character on Mad Men. By its 5th season, she was fully established as a part of the main cast. Before we talk about how refreshing this is, and how it offers a necessary juxtaposition to the intoxicating, mesmerizing decay surrounding the lives of the other characters, we should talk about why she became a major part of the show. This process was not merely a matter of the character growing older. It was a matter of Mad Men discovering the emotional power and longing actress Kiernan Shipka could bring to the character. The first major instance of this is in Season 3, when her beloved grandpa Gene dies. As the adults joke and downplay his death, Sally bursts in and excoriates them as best she can. Yes, she's being childish, and she doesn't understand a nuance, but nevertheless her fury is righteous. She is attempting to tear down the decorum-based culture of her parents' generation, and as she matures, this is territory she will return to. Shipka's performance is steely and aching, and because of this, the show made the decision to rely more heavily on Sally as it went along. As the program reached its apex of quality in seasons 4 and 5, she became increasingly important, and when the show lost a half step, Sally kept it grounded. Many of the most powerful and profound episodes in Season 6 and Season 7 involve her, such as The Crash, when she realizes she doesn't know enough about Dawn to be completely sure a burglar who talks about having raised him is lying, and the Season 6 finale, In Care Of, when he takes her to where he grew up so as to help her understand him better. Though the best interaction between father and daughter comes in A Day's Work in Season 7, when he finally decides to be completely honest with her. However, Sally's impact on the series extends far beyond her relationship with Dawn. Mad Men is built on the premise of sleek, mysterious advertising executives fulfilling their worst impulses in the last era before that tower of exploitation finally started to collapse. That bygone era is mythologized. It is easy to be immersed in because all the characters are immersed in it, with the exception of one, that being Sally. Unlike Dawn, she's not chasing after a false image of happiness. Her mere presence helps tear down the image of the Mad Men. Because Mad Men never approves of the misogynist, sexist culture it depicts, all the characters who work against that culture are easy to support. Peggy is the modern working woman trying to break into a world that does not want her. Joan is the more old-fashioned woman who starts the series wanting to find a husband and live in the suburbs, only to be swept into an existential crisis when she finds that life unfulfilling. Even Dawn is at his best when he helps Peggy and when he opens up to people who care about him, two things that directly oppose the culture he tries to emulate and internalize. This is also why Pete is so consistently disliked. In a show lionizing outsiders, he is the ultimate sniveling careerist insider. However, all these characters have to deal with the mythos of the Mad Men and everything they represent. Even Peggy starts the series expecting to be nothing more than a secretary. But Sally is free of that conditioning. She rejects it immediately and thoroughly, and that's a major reason why her character is consistently compelling. Characters like Peggy and Joan try to work within the system. They benefit from the changing tides of the 1960s, but they are not leading those tides. Sally, however, is vocal, brash, and brazen. She never hesitates to take shots at those she considers to have an archaic and vapid conception of the world. Yes, she does not deserve sole credit for this. Because of those who have come before her, Sally does not face as many obstacles as Joan or even Peggy, but she deserves credit for taking full advantage of the opportunities afforded to her, and for seeking to push further the boundaries of what is expected. Even her acerbic and often cruel mother, Betty, is eventually impressed by her. For most of the series, Betty considers Sally to be a failure. As such, she feels like she has failed as a mother. Of all the female characters in this show, Betty has most internalized the expectations of her era. She has done what her mother expected of her, marrying young and raising a family. This does not satisfy her, but she tries to appear as dignified and poised as is expected of a woman of her time. So the conflict between Betty and Sally is the conflict between a mother who has so fully internalized the role she is supposed to play that it has become an identity she cannot free herself from, and a daughter who loudly and wholly rejects that role and her mother's attempts to enforce it on her. By the end of the series, Betty accepts her daughter's nonconformist streak as a positive. Betty realizes how trapped she is, but when she tries to free herself by returning to school, she is diagnosed with cancer. Rather than endure years of misery, Betty chooses not to seek treatment. Her misfortune makes her glad her daughter is completely different from her.
Sally, I always worried about you because you marched to the beat of your own drum. But now I know that's good. I know your life will be an adventure.
Though Betty did not get the daughter she wanted, she decides this is for the best. She is proud of her daughter despite not being able to understand her. Though Sally's youth allows her permanent freedom from many of the cultural constraints imposed upon the older characters, this is but one aspect of what separates her from them, and positions her as a counterbalance to them and their mythos. Another is her resilience. Sustained positive change is hard. The adult characters consistently fall into cycles wherein they try to change, and they believe they have, but when adversity knocks, they abandon their new selves and return to who they were. Don Draper is the best example of this. In Season 4, he is a lonely, broken man. This is far from a positive chapter in his life, but it is a promising chapter. He is open to great change, and he takes steps in that direction before squandering his new beginning when the advertising agency needs saving. Sally, however, suffers disappointment after crushing disappointment, but she is never broken. She grows into one of the most determined and calm-minded characters in the show. There are no caveats to this growth. While the possibility of her becoming a misanthropic delinquent is raised, she avoids that path due to her sheer determination. Instead, she becomes a surrogate mother to her two younger brothers, and with the connections provided to her because of her upbringing, plus her sharp wit and earnest intellect, her future looks bright. However, neither of these components frees her from the central flaw that dogs the other characters, especially Dawn, and is only tangentially related to the time period this show takes place in, this flaw being their tendency to lionize image instead of substance. Because of this, when they correctly identify that they need to change, they try to change by adopting a different image instead of confronting the idea that this image-centric worldview is the root of their unhappiness. But Sally never has to struggle to free herself from this worldview because she never has it. This is one advantage she has gleaned from how disruptive her life has been since she was young. Her parents divorced when she was old enough to fully understand what was happening, but young enough to not have any hope of effectively coping with it. But the episode that best represents how the sordid world she lives in denies her the wonderment and innocence of childhood is episode 507, At the Codfish Ball. Sally's part in this episode is actually quite small, which surprises me whenever I watch it, because she is always the first character I think of when I consider this episode. After dressing up in a chic, space-age outfit that makes her feel like an adult, she gets to accompany Dawn to a dinner where he is receiving an award for that cynical manipulation of a letter ostensibly detailing why he is quitting tobacco. This is a sham, but Sally doesn't know that. To her, this is a dream come true until the end. At the dinner, Roger has been her quote-unquote date. The interactions between them are precious and hilarious. It makes her feel like the adult she always wants to be. But at the episode's conclusion, she catches him having oral sex with Marie, Megan's mother. This scarring sight dissuades her from wanting to be an adult, and when her friend Glenn asks her how the city is, she answers, dirty. In the short term, scarring events like this are disquieting and uncomfortable, inspiring pathos for Sally's loss of innocence. However, in the long term, they allow her to not make the same mistakes as the other characters in this show. Because she never developed an attachment to an image, she doesn't cling to an image, which gives her more control over herself and means she's not trapped by illusions. This separates her from the other characters. She's far from perfect, and there is no shortage of issues she will have to contemplate as she reaches adulthood, but her perception of the world is astute and accurate. Because she's not fooled, and because she's the greatest threat to the mythos of men like her father and Roger Sterling, the show transitioning more to her as it progresses reveals the cracks in that mythos expanding. At its start, Mad Men was about those at the top of a society about to radically change. By its end, the show had transitioned into a work about the new society formed from these changes. And while characters like Joan and Peggy benefited from that transition while helping to facilitate it, Sally emerges into a world formed by that transition. The image of the future entices Pete into wanting to be Dawn, and Dawn into believing his second marriage will succeed where his first failed, but those images of the future are shallow, hollow, and immaterial. The most positive, genuine, and ambitious image of the future comes in the character of Sally Draper.
You know what I'm gonna write down for my dream? I want to get on a bus and get away from you and Mom and hopefully be a different person than you two.
By the last interaction Dawn has with Sally in the finale, it is clear that she is in a better position than him. Despite being 16, she is less lost and more perceptive. She needs him less than he needs her. The relationship between them is healthier than it was in Season 6, thanks in large part to his compelling act of honesty and a trust in Episode 702, A Day's Work, but in exchange for giving Dawn someone he can confide in, she gets to be treated not only like someone who is respected, but like someone who is worth respecting. When Sally thinks of being treated like an adult, in a positive light, this is what she thinks of. But by the end of the series, Sally has settled into the role of the adult. She has taken on the responsibilities of an adult, so she is treated as one. However, Dawn still needs the stability she provides. That may sound strange considering he's a powerful adult and she's his teenage daughter, but his relationship with her is one of the few relationships he has that he can consistently rely upon. She brings out the best in him, but he does not necessarily bring out the best in her. Mad Men's relative optimism compared to shows like The Sopranos is dominated by how all of its characters, with the tragic exception of Betty, are more or less all right by the end of the series. But this optimism is most evident in the case of Sally, whose future looks as bright or brighter than all of the other characters despite all the sordid drama and aching tragedy she has had to endure. Anyway, if you liked what you saw today, consider donating to my Patreon so I can produce even more revelatory content. Also, don't forget to like and comment and subscribe, all that boundary-pushing stuff. Adios, comrades!